Reverend Ken. I'm coming to you from Crisis and Answer Ministry. This is a good day. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Come on in. This is a good day. Come on in. When you come in, try to share someone. Let's share this broadcast. We're going to have a good time this evening. Good evening. I'm Reverend Ken, and I come to you from Crisis and Answer Ministries. I would like to thank God for this day and this day's journey. If it had not been for the Lord on our side, where would we be? I would like to thank each of you for tuning in weekly to this Bible study. I am forever grateful for you, and you. As a minister of the gospel, I come that everyone under the sound of my voice should become informed believers. This evening passage is coming out of the book of Romans, the 12th chapter, the first and second verse, and it reads, "Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." This evening's subject is conquering the battles for your mind. Conquering the battles for your mind. My guest this evening is a very special young lady to me, Dr. Chante Dickerson. At this time, I would like to bring Dr. Dickerson on. How you
Hello.
doing, Dr. Dickerson?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good. Thank you
Good.
for coming on and joining me tonight. We're going
Happy.
to get started. First of all, let's do a self intro. Who are you?
As Reverend Ken said, my name is Dr. Chante Dickerson. I am a physician. I graduated medical school a few years ago, and right now I'm currently in residency specializing in psychiatry. So I'm studying all aspects of psychiatry and mental health, and I plan on doing a fellowship in child psychiatry that will begin in July. So I'll be specializing in that and double boarded in adult and child psychiatry soon. So that's what I'm doing right now.
So you Reverend Ken's daughter, huh?
I'm Reverend Ken's daughter, most importantly.
That smile. And my own smile. Okay, Dr. Dickerson, we are talking about mental illness.
Yes.
We're talking about distress. Let's see, let me ask this question. There's a known fact that many folks are walking around living with a mental illness and not knowing anything is wrong. How common do you think that is?
You're definitely right. It's definitely a known fact that people are kind of walking around having these symptoms and just not feeling too great, but not knowing that maybe their symptoms might be due or explained by a mental health diagnosis. And it seems about 1 in 4 people have some form of mental illness, which is quite a large percentage. It's 25%, our population, which is a lot of people. You think about the number of people in a household sometimes. You may have 4 or 5 people in the household. The chances that one person may be suffering from some type of mental illness at some point in their life just kind of meets that statistic. And usually, at least 50% of the people who are diagnosed with some form of mental illness or have some form of mental illness have never sought treatment, and that could be due to many reasons. Yeah, the stigma, of course, especially within our community, cost of treatment, or simply not even knowing that their symptoms can be explained by one of these diagnoses.
So we could walk around with an illness, a mental illness, and not even knowing it.
Absolutely. Happens way more often than we would like to think.
Dr. Dickerson, what are some of the specific challenges minority children with mental illnesses face?
People of color, we can face a multitude of challenges at higher rates compared to our counterparts. As mentioned before, there's a stigma within our community that kind of shines a poor light on mental health and seeking treatment, especially. So, We also have fewer resources in our communities, so we might not have the clinics that could provide us great care within our communities or even in a close distance. So if you don't have great transportation where the local bus can't take you to these clinics, like you're already limited in your resources there. But there's also a challenge of cost. So even if you can get to these places or find the provider that can really help you with what you need, sometimes the cost is just not reasonable for some of us. Because it's not uncommon to have to pay out of pocket for like a quality therapist or a psychiatrist, especially if you need to see them kind of in a timely manner and you can't wait months or a year, which some of these wait times are.
So a lot of the stuff over the last 10 years when the government was cutting things, one of the first things they cut was mental illness funding.
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Dickerson, how can we address the issues of mental illness in the people of color community?
Kind of just like what you said, we think about the fundings that were cut and whatnot. So policy changes are something that are needed and advocacy to change things like that and get those things covered, like universal mental health coverage. If we had that, that would dramatically improve access, as we talked about, just not having those access and those resources. If we could get some coverage and make sure those things are in place, we can get access to the care that we need. Then more diversity and cultural sensitivity trainings in the medical field and specifically the mental health field as well can help us feel as minorities feel more comfortable even seeking mental health care. Then there's of course education and awareness of the commonality of mental illness within our community. We need to educate ourselves on what do these symptoms mean or how do these mental illnesses present? How common are they? Just so we can feel just a little bit sense of normality there. Like it's not as uncommon as we want to believe. And just kind of normalizing these symptoms can help people in our community just feel less maybe like embarrassed about discussing their mental health. Because, should be able to talk about it and seek treatment for this just as we would for our physical health. And one way to make that a little easier would be great if we could integrate mental health more into our primary care settings. Like when we go get our annual exams, or people getting their sports physicals, taking those screenings seriously. If they're screening for depression or anxiety, or if you're feeling these symptoms, talk to your primary care doctor. Ask them for resources for a local psychiatrist or a referral if they can give you one. So those are a couple ways that we can address the issue within our community.
Dr. Dickerson, so how can I say one of my kids might be experiencing some kind of mental illness? Can I see that maybe they might be sleeping too much, or maybe they change of appetite?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely symptoms you can look out for, especially things like depression. There's certain symptoms or certain mental illnesses where the symptoms may be right in your face and obvious. Say you have
Right,
some
right.
people showing signs of schizophrenia, like they're hearing voices or seeing things that aren't there. That's not normal for your child or the person that you care about. So you're going to probably seek help a little faster for that. But you need to also be aware of signs of depression or anxiety. So, like you said, sleeping too much or not being able to sleep at all, having insomnia, changes in appetite that could be overeating or undereating. You can have decreased concentration, loss of interest in your usual activities. Say someone usually loves to go out running or loves to go to the gym and they just aren't doing those things anymore. They just don't have the motivation, which is another sign, just a lack of motivation to go after things they want or things they enjoy. And of course, having thoughts of harming themselves, so suicidal thoughts, you need to watch out for that, let alone suicidal actions. Those are definitely all big, big warning signs. And, sometimes a lot of people have a mix of these things. And some people can really cover it up with a smile and being very social when they're out and about. But you need to kind of keep an eye on the people that you care about and watch out for these signs and seek help if that's what's necessary.
So mental illness can be very serious then, because you said suicide.
Absolutely. That's definitely one of the downsides of letting these illnesses go untreated. It can definitely lead to suicidal thoughts, and suicide attempts, and sometimes those lead into people dying of suicide. So yes, it's absolutely very serious, just as serious as any other uh, disease that you would go get treated for.
Okay, Dr. Dickerson. What can you, as a provider, recommend to those who are experiencing or affected by someone with a possible mental illness who have not been checked?
Yeah, just like I said, if you're experiencing any of those symptoms, like I kind of just explained, of course, the thing I'd recommend is seeking assistance for your symptoms. Finding a support system is very important. So whether that's within your family or within your friends or a local support group. That's something you can look up to see what type of support groups are around me, or some type of just any type of group that you can go do art projects with, or go to a poetry night and find a community. Just somewhat like make a community for yourself that you can have some support from. And then sometimes, if your symptoms are severe enough, that is the time where you need to seek out help either through your primary care doctor and ask them for resources, or of course, reach out directly to a therapist or a psychiatrist yourself. There's actually a link going at the bottom here, www.inclusivetherapist.com. It's just one source that you can look at. This is a website that has actually gathered specifically therapists and psychiatrists from minority backgrounds, because that's who we tend to just be more comfortable talking to and being vulnerable with.
That's
So you
good.
can type in your location, your zip code, and they'll try to connect you with someone locally. And a lot of times there are definitely virtual options if you don't want to go to an office, and they have different payment plans and different cost ranges. So check that website out, and I'll also put a link in the chat box for of another website that has a couple other resources that you all can use. So I'll post that.
That's what you wanted?
No, not yet.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay.
But that what he just put on there, you can put it back up if you want that. That's the crisis text line. So if you are feeling some of those symptoms of feeling like you're very overwhelmed, you feel like kind of your symptoms are overtaking you, as if impacting your function on a day-to-day basis, and it leads to suicidal thoughts or behaviors, that's when you would text this crisis line. This is a crisis line when you're feeling like I'm at the point where I may harm myself. That's when you text them, and they'll kind of talk through it with you, and they'll see like what other help may you need, and they'll have the suggestions for you. But this is a crisis text line that you can text at any time.
Okay. I have another question for you, doctor. Are mental illness generational?
There's definitely a genetic component to many mental illness diagnoses. So the chances of developing certain disorders can certainly be higher if you have a parent or even a sibling with a mental illness. But of course, if you have a parent with it, the chances are higher than a sibling. But the sibling definitely increases your chances beyond the general population's chances of developing that mental illness.
So, goodness. Are there triggers that can set off some or all of these illnesses?
Um, Sometimes there aren't necessarily any triggers for some mental illnesses. Some people just may be more genetically predisposed to them. But there are definitely environmental factors, like just like there's genetic factors, we also have environmental factors that can play a role in developing some of these things. And some of the common ones, that play a role in people leading to having depression, anxiety, or personality disorders, or even schizophrenia or bipolar disorder, can be like a difficult childhood, having just a hard time growing up, some form of neglect, some form of trauma in your past, high levels of stress, poor physical health, and definitely substance abuse. We see a lot of that in my hospital.
Mighty. Do kids with mental illness grow to be adults with mental illnesses?
That can depend on the diagnosis again, but there's plenty of hope for many symptoms to resolve over time with proper treatment. And I will say the earlier help is sought, there's a higher likelihood of returning to what we call your baseline. So where you started at before you started having symptoms of a mental illness. That's what we consider your baseline. And once you kind of get a little sicker, uh, the care we're trying to, we're giving you is hopefully to bring you as close to that baseline as possible. But the earlier you seek help, the better chance we have of getting you back to your healthy baseline.
So it can be healed. It can be cured. Mental illness do not be permanent.
There's definitely, hope with every mental illness diagnosis. Sometimes some people they have severe symptoms, and with treatment, their symptoms become minimal to minor to non-existent. So it can definitely vary, but there's definitely a chance for every mental illness that you can be diagnosed with to have an alleviation of symptoms with proper treatment.
So we have kids walking the streets, kids walking the street with mental illnesses.
Yeah,
Kids.
unfortunately, yes, that is the
Uh,
reality of the
what
situation.
age range would you say, Dr. Dickerson?
I mean, it can really range from, 4-year-olds who might be getting diagnosed with autism or even ADHD.
So those are mental illnesses as well.
Yeah, psychiatrists, and we also treat those as well.
So, okay, so we got 4 years old all the way up until 100, I imagine. Huh?
Yes, the chances of a very late onset of a mental illness are pretty rare unless it's some form of depression. But outside of that, like things like the severe mental illnesses like schizophrenia and whatnot, like in women, you usually don't see that happening until, almost their 30s. And men is a little sooner, actually, that they start to develop symptoms. But there are such things as early onset where you can start developing some symptoms of schizophrenia, which is like psychotic symptoms as early as your teenage years.
So somebody my age, 30, in my 30s, 40s, okay, 50s, okay, okay. So let me ask you a question. Somebody my age, can I develop a mental illness at this age?
Yes, it's definitely possible, especially things like depression or anxiety, things that can, that type of thing can be developed at any age.
But what triggers it to start at this late age in life?
Just like a lot of people, depression can set in. It can be minimal triggers that kind of lead to a low mood, or you can have a lot of triggers depending on what's going on in your life at the time. If your symptoms of these, I listed a lot of them earlier, just like that low mood, having a hard time sleeping, appetite, low interest, low concentration, also potentially harming yourself, just these mix of these symptoms, um, hopelessness, helplessness, guilt, if you have a certain number of those, it can meet criteria for depression, but it has to last for 2 months. Those symptoms have to be kind of consistent for 2 months before you get diagnosed with like major depressive disorder. Before that, if it's only like going on for about a month or under, that's what we would call adjustment disorder. You're adjusting to these tough things that are happening in your life at the moment. It could be divorce or something going wrong with the job. It could be all types of different things going on for people where they have to adjust and their mood is impacted through the adjustment.
So
But if
during
it's
this adjustment,
longer, it can be, depression that it turned into.
during this adjustment, can it be reversed after the fact once you get your footings back?
Absolutely. And that's why it's called adjustment. You're just adjusting to these changes.
So the
And you're
pill is not going to be permanent. That would just be a temporary solution then.
what was that?
Will the pills be permanent if you have to take some kind of medication?
Prescribed medication. Oh yes, medication like antidepressants and anxiety medications, especially during an adjustment period, can definitely be prescribed for a temporary reason. But there's nothing wrong with continuing them if you feel like your baseline mood isn't necessarily the happiest, and you worry that this might persist for a longer time. There's nothing wrong with being on them more long term. But if you want to give them a shot of being off of the medication after you're feeling a lot better, you just
Yeah.
have to weigh in your mind, like, am I feeling a lot better with the help of because of the help of the medication, or have things just kind of gotten better in life in general, and I think I can manage my mood a little bit better now without the medication.
So you got adjustment, which is brought on by circumstances,
Hmm.
and which can be reverted back to a normal condition once that circumstance has cleared up.
once the circumstances cleared up, or once you've learned great skills of how to cope with the new circumstances.
So now you got to learn how to cope with certain
Yeah,
things.
absolutely. And that's something a therapist usually can help a lot with, or a support group. You learn coping skills, just kind of learning how to adjust to your new circumstances and the new changes in your life. And that's a way to hopefully get you back to kind of your baseline mood.
Well, Dr. Dickerson, you are in your 20s. Is this
Mhm.
affecting you, the stuff you're seeing that these young kids are having so many different mental illnesses and talking about committing suicide, having to adjust to issues in their home? How do you how do you cope with this?
It can definitely be challenging, especially like you said, in children, because a lot of times the things causing their low mood and whatnot is due to factors outside that aren't always in their control. So that's the part that makes that a little bit more difficult for me to accept and kind of cope with. But for me, I have to kind of come home and kind of try to leave work at work, as hard as that may be. I have to come home and do things that I enjoy and do things that I find, joy in. So that sometimes I might be watching TV, sometimes I may be baking or cooking a good meal or going to the movie theater. I just have to kind of learn how to keep that balance between work and things that I enjoy in my life.
Dr. Dickerson, have I told you I'm very proud of you?
Oh, thank you, Dad. Thank you,
You
Red.
are doing a wonderful job. You are doing a wonderful job. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
I have a question. What advice can you offer that can help those who need care?
Like we said earlier, if you're feeling like you are having these symptoms that you can't cope with yourself or manage yourself, I just can't emphasize enough seeking the help that you may need, finding that support system, telling your primary care doctor if you have one what you're going through, so they can they usually can gauge if you need more help than what they can offer you, because sometimes they can offer you help, they can offer you some type of advice or coping skills, or even if you needed, medication, but they'll know when it's out of their scope and they can refer you to a mental health professional, whether it's a psychiatrist, or you can seek out therapy. Like I said, that link is kind of flowing in the blue row down there, inclusivetherapist.com. Check that out, or check out this list of resources that I'm trying to put into the chat box if I figure it out.
Very good. Okay, I'm done with the mental illnesses, but over
Okay.
2 years we've been dealing with a thing called COVID.
Hmm.
A lot of people's life have changed. I have heard many divorces, many people separated. A lot of things have. I talked to a gentleman the other day, and he stated him and his wife argues more now than they ever did because they never seen each other out of 40 some years this
Hmm.
much until COVID. That's stressful. So
Yes,
a lot of us have been under increased stress over the last few years due to a multitude of reasons. Can you share with us about how to manage it? How do we manage stress?
yes, absolutely. You're definitely right. The last couple of years have been fairly difficult for a lot of people, for a multitude of reasons. And one thing to know is that stress can present itself in different ways and different, for a lot of people. It can present as like, physical symptoms like headaches or jaw pain. It can present as with trouble sleeping, changes in your appetite, mood swings, difficulty concentrating, feeling overwhelmed. And it's important to know, like when you're experiencing like long-term stress, it changes. It can change your body, your physical body. Your brain is exposed to like increased levels of a hormone called cortisol. Um, and that actually leads to weakening of your immune system, which is what you need to fight illnesses and diseases. So there are definitely repercussions to long-term stress and not coping with them properly. And there's certain triggers to stress. There's of course things that you may be going through in your personal life, but not getting enough sleep can increase your stress. Not having a network of support, some type of major life change, such as moving, death of a loved one, starting a new job, having a child, getting married. These things, while some people think like, oh, these are all great things, for some people, they can cause stress because there's such a large change for them. Poor physical health, not eating well, all of these can put stress on you and your body. And of course, everyone has their own threshold for stress. What may upset you or cause you stress may not even bother the next person at all, but they might have their own thing that leads to them having more stress. Um, so, different ways to reduce stress. I can go through a few of those that will hopefully help someone. Hopefully, they'll hear something different or something that they might be able to try to cope with their stress a little better. Um, One thing, accepting kind of your needs. So recognize what your triggers are that cause your stress. What situations make you feel physically or mentally agitated? And once you know these things, it'll be easier for you to either be able to avoid them or learn ways to cope with them when you can't avoid them. Another thing you can do is manage your time. So a lot of people get to a point of just feeling overwhelmed on a day-to-day basis, but if you learn how to manage your time a little better, it may help with that. So prioritizing your activities and the things that you need to do can help you use your time well. Making a day-to-day schedule can just help better ensure that you don't feel so overwhelmed with everyday tasks and deadlines. Practice relaxation. I definitely recommend deep breathing exercises. These are things, if you simply Google deep breathing exercise, you'll see a couple different ones that you can try. One that a lot of my patients tend to like, especially with high anxiety or stress in a given moment, is the 4-7-8 technique. You take 4 seconds to inhale, hold for 7 seconds, exhale for 8 seconds. So the 4-7-8 technique. And that can, do that a few times until you physically feel your body start to relax. So that's one thing you can do to practice relaxation. And of course, there's meditation. You don't have to go buy an app, but you can look on YouTube for free meditations. It can be 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 30 minutes, whatever you have the time or the capacity for. Um, and taking a break that can just, help you refocus and that can really benefit you beyond the immediate moment. Exercise is important, of course. Exercising to some degree daily. We recommend at least 30 to 40 minutes of daily exercise. And that could be just taking a walk outside, walking your dog. If you want to go to the gym, do a dance class through YouTube or with a group. What I just suggest is make it fun for yourself because I know hearing exercise can just be triggering for some people. Like, that sounds terrible. I don't want to do that. But if you find a way to exercise, and make it fun for yourself, you're way more likely to do it. Set aside time for yourself. So a lot of us can be, responsible for a lot of things and a lot of people may need a lot of things from us, but it's important to make time specifically for yourself to do things that you enjoy. That might be reading a book, going to the movies, getting a massage, taking your dog on a walk. Just have some you time in your day. Eating well, I think that's self-explanatory. Just eating all those processed foods can have an effect on you mentally and physically, of course. So having just that balanced diet of unprocessed foods, whole grains, fresh fruits, vegetables, sets that foundation for a healthy body and a healthy mind. And your diet and your physical health can also help stabilize your mood. They definitely go hand in hand. Get enough sleep, as we talked about earlier. If you don't if you don't sleep well at night, you might start your next day off on the wrong foot, and it can be pretty hard to bounce back from that sometimes. So if you try to get an adequate amount of sleep, that would be ideal. Alcohol and drugs, of course. Some people think that that's a way to cope with their stress, but there's a lot of times that can actually worsen your stress, and can also lead to issues like substance abuse because you're trying to cope so much through things that aren't too great for you and can become addictive. So we want to find other coping mechanisms outside of alcohol, outside of illicit drugs, because leading to substance abuse will lead you to a whole nother lane of stress down the line. That's not what you want. So just kind of educate yourself on what substance abuse may look like and get help if that's the case. And lastly, just talk to someone, as I keep emphasizing throughout this collaboration here. So whether that's friends, family, a counselor, a support group, just find someone to talk to, air out what you need to talk about, and get the help that you may need. So those are just some techniques that you can try. Hopefully, you heard at least one that you haven't tried yet that you can try next time you're feeling pretty stressed and need a way to cope.
Dr. Dickerson, you've done a wonderful job.
Thank you.
I'm so proud of you. Where's my grandson at?
He's getting ready for bed.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna put you to the side for a second, doctor, okay?
Sound-
Before I sign off, I would like to say something about the mind. God is the only person that have access to our mind. Satan cannot read or hear our thoughts. God is the only one who has that power. We have a battle sometimes with our mind by trying to do the good and right thing. When I try to do good, evil is always present. As I'm about to sign off now. Before I sign off, I would like to invite those who don't know Jesus as your personal Savior to make him your Lord and Savior. If you would like to become part of the body of Christ, repeat after me. Dear Lord, I know that I'm a sinner, and I ask for your forgiveness. I believe you died for my sins, and you rose from the dead. I turn from my sins and invite you to come into my heart, come into my life. I want to trust and follow you as my Lord and Savior. If you prayed that prayer, it's just that simple. I want to welcome you to the body of Christ. I want to leave this thought with you. Philippians, the 4th chapter, the 8th and 9th verse. It says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you have learned, whether you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. Good night, and may God keep you, is my prayer.